So we have a story here that's post-apocalyptic, set 80 years after the last war, aka World War III, and the world was pretty much destroyed by radiation. It became uninhabitable, as you can see, the picture definitely, showcases that, and thanks to the radiation, you have a bunch of people, a bunch of kids and individuals that had their DNA mutated to where they were able to gain abilities. Now, personally, I don't think radiation works like that, but at the end of the day, this is a story, it's not real, so it's completely fine to use that as a concept because of mutations, etc. So basically, the early concept of the story, what it's painting, is that the world has been forever changed thanks to World War III, or the Last War, as it's called. But the series doesn't just stop there. It builds upon, thanks to the aftermath of that and the rise of these abilities, they have now different facilities, different labs, they call them, that have these kids with different abilities pretty much locked away, kind of like test subjects. And it's very creepy, by the way, I'm just going to completely say it, but on the surface, if you didn't really look too deep into it, it seems like more or less it's innocent. But I've seen and read enough stories to where you have a bunch of kids basically in labs and, there's test experiments and stuff like that. Usually that's not good. That's bad news. Usually it means that these kids are probably being raised as some form of weapons or something like that as a position of power to target enemies, because that's just definitely what it looks like, especially with how they're ranked and, just how the abilities are assigned and stuff. It makes a lot of sense. But, obviously, there's a lot more to the story than this, because that's just the beginning. The title of the series is called The Last Dimension, and that alone already seems very different than what I've just already talked about, because that was just basically the premise, or the prologue of the story, of kind of setting the groundwork of what actually happens. The Last Dimension is a group of characters, our main cast of characters, being transported into another world through a portal. But along that happening, we see one character legitimately meet their end thanks to the portal, which is, pretty wild stuff. Basically, the series does have some pretty dark tones. It's definitely not a series that tries to shy away from that, which I appreciate, especially when you look at the cutesy nature of how the characters look. Like, here, I'll zoom down. Like, the characters in general look, like, cutesy. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Made in Abyss, I'm not gonna lie. But, the characters are drawn in a way to where, like, it seems like an innocent story, but obviously there is some darker undertones once you get past that. Now, in Chapter 11, which is, the latest chapter I've read, it is revealed that this world that they're in is basically a vessel where everybody that goes through portals or different dimension traveling, they eventually come to this world. Our characters that traveled to it was revealed that they were not the first to be here, and they will not be the last. We literally see characters come into this world and transport into it. And by the way, this character reminds me a lot of like Alice in Wonderland with, the cat. Kind of reminds me of that. Or maybe the White Rabbit. Regardless of your stance on that one, though, I think that the fact that there is going to be multiversal travel and dimension-like travel is pretty cool. It's a cool concept, especially when you throw in post-apocalyptic, because, multiverse stuff can be fun. It can be really good. It's why I like, reincarnated stories, isekai stories, because the template might seem generic, but if there's a really solid writer backing it and behind it, you can have a really good story on your hands. And that's where case in point comes in for The Last Dimension. The fact that, you have this world that pretty much has a bunch of other worlds linking to it, and a bunch of different people are falling into it, means that you can have many, many different cultures, different sub-factions, and different, worlds, realities, different laws of physics. It can be really freaking cool, and I love that type of stuff, because if a writer is creative enough, and they're able to really kind of hone in on that, they can make a truly jaw-dropping story. So that's one of the reasons what drove me to even start this series to begin with, was that concept alone. Now, as someone that has read it, I will say, it is still very slow. It is a very slow burn. I've only read 11 chapters at this point, but as you can see, there's over 90 chapters, and probably more, most likely, if I go searching, but there is over 90 chapters of The Last Dimension, so it's quite a bit of a read. But, so far from what I have read of it, it feels like an adventure story. That's what it feels like. It feels like it's an adventure, which it's been a while since I read a good adventure story, and I think that's fun. It's fun to be able to just see different worlds and kind of dive into maybe the ecosystems and just the food and all that type of stuff. I think it's really cool, especially when a writer kind of flexes that, because it's creativity, and that is what I've been feeling from The Last Dimension. I will say that I am curious about the cast of characters, by the way. There's a lot of mysteries and a lot of foreshadowing, which I don't really want to spoil for those that haven't haven't read it yet, but I will say, you should 100% check this out if you do like an adventure story, and isekai stories as well. I'll tell you, it's better than, The Beginning After the End that came out today. I'm just gonna say, I mean, the story of The Beginning After the End is great, but the animation, like the anime, was just, no. You could be spending your time either reading that or reading this. I'm just gonna straight up say. But if you're interested in reading this, I will have this linked in the description. Please check it out. It's completely free to read. You don't have to worry about anything. But I guess, yeah, thank you so much for watching. May all of you be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.